Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jen Elder, and I'm the director of the Homeless and Housing Resource Center. Next slide. We are excited that you are joining us today for our webinar, Taking a Trauma-Informed Approach with Events of Escalation. We have had an overwhelming response to today's webinar, so that's wonderful for us to know that this is such an important topic for you in your work. And so we have a wonderful panel of speakers to share their work with you today. Next slide. I'll start with a quick disclaimer. We are funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, but the views represented today on the webinar don't necessarily represent SAMHSA or HHS. Next slide. As you can see, we do have American Sign Language interpretation today for today's meeting, and we really appreciate them being part of this event with us. We also have live transcription available with the closed captioning button. If you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us via email and we will work to troubleshoot that with you. Next slide. So we already have quite a few people joining us today. Thank you. With that, all participant lines are automatically muted, and a recording will be available on our website. We know that there might be more interest than there is space today. So if you want to watch this webinar again or share it with a colleague, that should be available within about a week. Now, if you want to download the slides now, those are available at our website, hhrctraining.org. We won't have the chat feature today through the webinar because there's so many people, but please submit your questions using the Q&A feature. We also welcome any feedback you have during the webinar. We have a kind of action-packed day today in the next 90 minutes, so we will likely not get to all questions, just want to set expectations there. But we will do our best to follow up and gather those and provide a follow-up resource for you after the webinar. At the end of the webinar, there'll be an evaluation. We appreciate your time in filling that out. We'll also put that link in the chat at the end. Everyone who completes that evaluation will get a certificate of participation, though no CEUs are offered through HHRC. Next slide. So today we're going to talk through using a trauma-informed lens to help understand agitated and escalated behaviors and really dive deep into compassionate de-escalation approaches. We also know that these escalated events can have an impact on staff, whether that's us as direct service staff, or maybe you're a supervisor of direct service staff. And so our speakers are going to talk some about follow-up and practices that promote self-care. And then as well, integrating persons with lived expertise into your program's crisis response plan. So next slide. We've got a wonderful panel today. Their full bios are available now on our website in the webinar materials. So I will give you just a brief overview, but I encourage you to check out their full expertise in our resources. So first is Mari Aceves, and she's a consultant with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing and has worked in the mental health field for 20 years, working with children, adolescents, and adults, and she'll be covering the key principles for understanding trauma. We're also joined by Laura Leone, an integrated health consultant for the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, who has also worked in the behavioral health field for over 20 years, providing training and consultation on topics such as mental health, substance use, trauma-informed care, and crisis intervention. And she has also joined the HHRC community earlier this year, discussing self-care. So she's a familiar face for our community. Biff Hitchens has been working as a certified peer support specialist for over 8 years. His lived experience has included over 36 hospitalizations, multiple incarcerations, and housing insecurity. And due to both his lived experience and knowledge that he's gained from working in the mental health field, he's learned effective methods in de-escalation for those who are experiencing a mental or substance use crisis. Carrie Parrott is joining us today and is the founder and CEO of Parrott Counseling Services, which provides mental health and addictions counseling for individuals and families. Carrie is a licensed clinical social worker and certified clinical supervisor. He's also employed by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as a HUD-VASH case manager. And Dr. Daniel Rosa is joining us from South Bronx, New York, where he is the Senior Medical Director of the Acacia Network. In addition, he serves as an attending in emergency medicine at the Philadelphia VA Medical Center. He's a senior instructor of the Advanced Traumatic Life Support course at Westchester Medical Center and in a Narcan rescue course. So again, they have many more details, and you'll learn more about them throughout today's webinar and during the and in the webinar materials. So you can learn more about them, but we want to know more about you, our audience today. So I'm going to do 2 quick polls. This first one is, what is your primary role within your organization? Do you provide direct supportive services? That could be as a caseworker, peer specialist, housing navigator, direct clinical services, as a medical professional, for instance, a program supervisor, administrator, director, or you might be working in policy or technical assistance. And then, of course, the all-inclusive other option of things that we did not think of for the categories. So I see that we've got about 65% have voted. So we'll leave it open for just another few seconds. And before we wrap up, right, getting your votes in. All right. And we will end it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we've got just about 80%, and that is okay. Let me share the results so that everybody's seeing this. We have a great variety of participants today, with 62% providing direct supportive services. So I think there's a lot that you can get out of this today, as well as 21% who are acting in a program supervisor role, a director role. So you're helping support those frontline staff. Perfect. Let me try to share this second poll. Don't share. Technical issues. All right. This second very quick poll is just, how would you rate your own familiarity or comfort with de-escalation techniques? Got 3 options: novice, average, and expert. So you can just decide. They're all anonymous. Just how do you feel? It helps give our presenters a real pulse check of who's in the room. All right, we've got just about 70% of votes in. So we'll keep it open for just another few seconds. All right, and we will wrap this one up in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Perfect. We hit the 80% again. So with this, oh, did I stop the share? I think it was, well, it disappeared and from me, sorry. It was about 80% of people rated themselves about average. So that's great. I think there's a lot that we can learn. So stop the sharing there. And with that, we have reached the end of my Zoom technical expertise. So I will turn it over to Mari to get our panel started for today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jen. I don't know if you guys can see me. My camera is slowly coming on. There we go. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited to be here today. My name is Maria Seves, and I'm going to get started by inviting you to just really fully arrive. So if you can maybe turn off emails or other competing stimuli, maybe put away the phone, just so we can really be centered and present for our time together. And if it's comfortable for you, I'm going to invite you to push your feet into the ground and just really settle in, feeling the earth underneath you. Just for 3, 2, 1, releasing, coming back to a regular stance. And just very quickly, we're gonna Make fists with our hands. The tightest fist you possibly can, feeling the tension through the forearm, the wrists, into the fingers, the palms. And we're holding here for 3, 2, and 1. Release. And you're going to feel that difference between the tension and the release. So if any time during our time together you need to reground, feel free to use any of those, going into some deep breathing to help you stay centered and present. To start us off, we really want to make sure that we're understanding the link between trauma and individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity. There's tons of stats here, but really the overall picture is that individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity experience more trauma. Right? So, about 37% of individuals who are experiencing housing insecurities are not sheltered. A lot of these families that are on the street, unsheltered, are headed by single moms. And these women often experience post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse, depression. It's also important to note that children make up about a third of individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity. And they actually experience, or 5 times more likely to experience, trauma than the children who are living in financially stable households. And we have veterans, about 10% of the population, and 45% of these individuals do experience mental illness. So we want to keep in mind, we want to keep this as our fish tank, if you will, as we continue our conversation. So, when we talk about trauma, what is it that we're really talking about, right? And according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, trauma includes 3 key elements. It's going to be an event or a series of events or set of circumstance that is experienced by an individual as being either physically or emotionally harmful or potentially life-threatening. And that has lasting effects on the individual's functioning, right? Their mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. So we want to keep in mind those three key elements as we have our conversation. We also want to really be mindful of the impact of childhood trauma. We talked about a third of individuals experiencing housing insecurity being under the age of 18. So we want to make sure that we understand how this trauma can affect these children's functioning. So it goes from, their cognition. How ready are they to learn? Are they able to problem solve effectively? We often see language delays and a lot of difficulty with concentration, which often leads to academic achievement. Physical health, right? Often individuals who are experiencing housing insecurity are also experiencing food insecurity. So that leads to eating disorders, immune system issues, and sleep disorders. Emotions, which is, part of our big conversation here, individuals often tend to have a lot of difficulty controlling their emotions, recognizing the different emotions in their bodies. So, at the very beginning of our time together, we did this, squeezing your fist together or digging the feet into the floor. A lot of individuals that are not able to regulate their emotions don't always recognize different sensations in their bodies, right? They also have some effects on relationships, attachment styles, poor understanding of social interactions, and an overall difficulty of forming relationships. Their mental health suffers. There's a lot of anxiety, depression, negative self-image. We talked about PTSD, and suicidality. We see escalated behavior. So if individuals are not able to identify or regulate their emotions, this is where we see the escalated behaviors, aggressions. So poor self-regulation, social withdrawal, a lot of risk-taking or illegal activity, sexual acting out, which might lead to adolescent pregnancy. Um, and then last, brain development. So it is research has shown that often individuals that have experienced childhood trauma, their brains develop differently than individuals who do not experience childhood trauma. So when we talk about trauma in the brain, we really want to talk about state-dependent brain functions. And this refers to the way that people process and remember information based on their physical and mental state at the time of the event, right? So if an individual is focused primarily on their physical safety, their physical awareness, and their time is spent on sensory processing and integration, they're not going to have a lot of time to think about their emotions or how they're relating to other individuals. So their brain's primary focus is on their safety, not necessarily can I get along with individuals or can I learn? Those things come later. So it's very important that we keep in mind the person's state dependent functioning as we collaborate with our community. And here, just a quick depiction that when individuals are escalated or experiencing trauma, they often live in that red bubble of feeling being in the threat system, feeling threatened. And so the purpose is really detection of things that can protect them or things that will bring them harm. And what we want to do is get individuals to a place where they're able to manage their stress and promote some of these regulating abilities so that they're able to move into that higher level of learning, of being present, and being motivated towards accessing resources. The trauma system here, when we talk about the trauma system, we talk about an organized and coordinated effort in a defined geographic area or a population. And the focus here is to deliver a full range of care. And often this is not the case, right? So a social environment or system may not be able to help the individual regulate their emotional states and or their behaviors. And there might be very many reasons for that. So maybe individuals are not able to access these resources. Oftentimes, in healthcare, we have large caseloads and we are not able to circle back as quickly as we would like or spend as much time due to the length of our visits. So we do want to keep in mind that we are a part of the trauma system as well, and how we interact and how we teach people what resources we provide to help them cope and regulate with these emotional states. Now, when we talk about trauma, we have to talk about trauma-informed care, right? And trauma-informed care uses the recognition that certain behaviors are related to a traumatic experiences, and this drive a new set of practices, right? So with trauma-informed care, we really want to shift from the, person blaming lens and not ask what's wrong with you or why did you do that. We want to shift to understanding the context. Tell me what happened. Help me understand the situation, right? So we want to shift from blame lens to a compassionate lens to really understand the person's full experience. And here, the question, the new paradigm that emerges from trauma-informed care is really how are we shifting to an environment that is going to be of better service? How can I be a better partner for you to effectively meet your needs, right? So that's really the primary goal of trauma-informed care, shifting to partnership with our individuals. When we talk about trauma-informed care, it's really important that we talk about creating a safe and secure environment for everyone that we work with. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at all of the different types of safety that individuals need to experience in order to be present for our services, right? We talk about teaching de-escalation, individuals being able to identify different states in their bodies and in their brains. It's going to be very challenging if individuals are, like I mentioned earlier, primarily focused on their physical safety, their safety needs, so personal security, whether they have access to shelter, to food, to water, to clothing. So we want to make sure that we are addressing those things and understanding where the individuals that we're working with, where they are at the time we're interacting with them. So physical safety, this is so huge. We're talking about individuals who are experiencing, housing insecurity. So a lot of the individuals, have a lot of concerns that are different from our day in and out. And so when they are, part of their trauma is that they don't have a safe place to sleep, that they might not have consistent and secure access to food, right? Their perception of physical safety is going to be very different than what another person who is not experiencing housing insecurity might be. So we want to be mindful of what our offices look like. Do the individual have access to the door? Do we have bottles of water available for people? What is the temperature in our offices? Is it going to foster that feeling of physical safety for the people that come in to receive our services? Psychological safety. If once an individual is able to have some physical safety, then we move on to the psychological safety piece. And here is where there's the belief that you have the ability to be safe within yourself, that you have the ability to protect yourself, to keep yourself out of harm's way, that you are going to be able to be in a situation and trust the people around you are not only going to keep you physically safe, but psychologically, that you can have transparent conversations, that people have your best interest at heart. And when individuals have the psychological safety, it allows them to problem solve. It allows them to learn from the things that they're doing, from mistakes that they've made. It allows them to be open to sharing new ideas and to learning from different perspectives, right? And that ultimately leads to better and and more innovative decision making, problem solving that's going to be different from what a solution may have been had they not been open to or receptive to other feedback. Now, in talking about safety, it's really important that we talk about cultural humility. When talking about trauma informed care, we want to make sure that we are using the cultural humility lens versus a cultural competence lens. And the difference here, it's a different way to understand the approach to competency. Competency tells us, I've made it, I understand, I know it all. And what cultural humility asks us to do is to focus on three things. Number one, being committed to self evaluation, self critique, to continue to learn all the time. We are always looking for how we can improve the services we provide to our community. Number two, it asks us to have a desire to fix power imbalances where they should not exist. It asks us to be active, not just identify that there's a power imbalances, but to be active in a solution so that we can provide individuals with resources. to help that imbalance. And third, it asks for us to aspire to develop partnerships with the people and the groups that that we're collaborating with. So it asks us to be advocates to make sure that we are constantly pushing forward and working on these three categories all the time. It's a continuous circle. We never finish. We're always, like I said, lifelong learners here. Now, as we talk about cultural humility, part of it, is that commitment to being a lifelong learner. And so that leads us to, we talked about, being self-critical and assessing our own baggage. So this ultimately leads us to explore our own biases, our implicit biases. And what these are attitudes, stereotypes, beliefs that affect how we treat others. They might be intentional, they might not, but they still affect how we interact with others. And it is important that we keep in mind the 6 trauma-informed core principles. So maintaining safety, cultural humility, being compassionate and dependable, understanding trauma, being resilient and being able to recover, and collaborating with others. Also, the 4 R's of trauma-informed care. So realizing, recognizing, responding, and resisting re-traumatization. And here in realizing the widespread impact of trauma is so important when we're talking about individuals that are housing insecure. We don't know what their day in and day out is. And so we really have to make a mindful move to understand what trauma they are experiencing. We want to recognize the signs and the symptoms of trauma in all of the individuals we work with. I think that the pandemic has given us a very good example that we all experience events differently, and the trauma can surface in different ways. We want to respond in a way that is integrating knowledge about trauma, and we want to make sure we're integrating that into our policies, procedures, and the way we interact with individuals. And of course, we want to avoid re-traumatization. If we know something is a trigger for an individual, we want to avoid it. And the whole focus is really to use all of these things to build relationships where people are feeling that they're cared for, they're seen as individuals outside of their current context. So really the focus of trauma-informed outcome, what we want out of this is to make sure that people are feeling included, that we help individuals identify the impact of their behaviors, of their actions. We want to foster learning and capacity to manage strong emotions. And we want to offer as many resources as we can upfront so that we can ensure long-term success and buy-in from individuals. We want to make sure to take care of their physical needs, their safety, so that we can get them to a place where they're able to learn these techniques and these new skills that we're offering. So we're going to get into these specific de-escalation techniques. And here, first we want to employ purposeful and thoughtful interactions. So we want to make sure that we are using person first language, that we are being compassionate and seeing individuals for more than the context, right? We want to focus on their well-being and all of their needs. We want to focus on building relationships, practicing self-awareness. What are our reactions? Exploring those implicit biases. How did we arrive at a conclusion of or an opinion of a person? We want to make sure that we are promoting consistency and predictability. With individuals that are experiencing housing insecurity, it's not they don't have a lot of consistency in their lives. They don't have a lot of predictability. So we want to make sure that we offer that in our services. We want to teach. We want to definitely help individuals unpack, but we also want to empower them to learn, proactive regulation. Um, we want to recognize areas of strength in individuals. So we don't want to focus on just the things that are wrong or the things that are lacking. We want to focus, recognize, and really celebrate strengths that individuals have. We want to avoid any punitive or exclusionary practices. Like I said, the point of trauma informed care is really for people to feel included. And ultimately, foster a safe place where people feel physically safe, psychologically safe, so that they're able to really get into a space of learning new skills. So when we talk about those things, language matters. We want to make sure, like I just mentioned, using person first language. We want to reinforce feelings and beliefs with the language that we use. We want to help guide their behavior with the language that we use. It's really to allow us to be able to recognize resilience in others. Um, so, talking about language, one specific skill that we can that we can employ when working on de-escalation is active listening. So, very often, most often, I would say, we are listening to with the intent to respond. We're not really listening to understand, right? And active listening is asking us to do the opposite. It asks us to listen with all of our body, all of our senses. It requires that we're listening to understand the context, to understand the person, not just wait and respond and put in our 2 cents. It includes really active exploration and showing interest in what the speaker is sharing with you. And the reason why we want to employ active listening is because it's going to convey, it's going to show physically, verbally, your investment in the person that is sharing with you. So, the first step to engaging in active listening is to start with reflective listening. And this is, again, the big emphasis listening to understand. So, we're going to paraphrase what was heard. We're going to verify what we think we heard. It's very often that, if you're in a conversation and you say, okay, so you wanted me to do this, and the person will say, no, 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 that's not what I said, or that's not what I was asking. So here we are not responding until we understand fully what is being shared. So we start with reflective listening, paraphrasing, is this correct? Checking for clarification before we respond. Step 2 is now responding to what we heard. So this is challenging, not sharing your opinion if it wasn't asked for. A lot of us, in wanting to share in the experience, we share an opinion, and that's not always helpful. We also want to avoid answering questions that weren't asked. So here, we are only responding to what we heard the speaker say, which is why it's so important that we fully understand, that we clarify what the speaker shared with us. And here we have, the 7 key active listening skills. Number 1, being attentive. I mentioned using all of your senses, listening with your body, not being occupied on the phone or email or doing something else, making eye contact, sitting still. We want to ask open-ended questions. Again, for clarification, for understanding. We want to ask probing questions to further seek understanding. We want to paraphrase. I want to make sure I understand you. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Is this what you're asking of me? We want to be attuned to and reflect feelings. So again, only what is shared with us, and summarizing what the conversation was, what the speaker shared. Some things, now that we've talked about, some things that we're doing that we should be doing, we also want to talk about some ineffective ways to manage escalation. And we want to avoid avoiding. We want to make sure that when we are seeing somebody starting to escalate, because we're listening with our full body, we're looking at them, and their breathing is starting to be faster or more shallow, or maybe they're starting to wring their hands, maybe biting fingers, maybe they get up, maybe they're leaning into you. We don't want to avoid the situation. We don't want to act like it's not happening. We want to ask, are you feeling all right? You want to address it in the moment. You don't want to minimize what the person is sharing with you. If an individual asks or is sharing a traumatic experience or their perception about how they feel about an event, you don't want to say things like, well, it wasn't that bad. Oh, well, at least you made it here. Or, you don't want to minimize the person's perception, the person's experience. We want to validate their emotions and just help them to regulate and be able to de-escalate again. We don't want to be combative. We don't want to escalate the situation further. We definitely want to be mindful of, when an individual is becoming a safety concern, but we don't want to further trigger escalation by being perceived as combative instead of supportive. So even, sometimes we do all this work, we work on building relationships, we work on all of the proactive strategies. And unfortunately, sometimes behaviors still happen. If an individual is experiencing, some deep trauma or some psychosis, substance abuse related hallucinations, they're inebriated, their feeling or their perception is that you are not supportive, but instead you're minimizing or you're combative. Sometimes individuals get escalated. So when that happens, what do we do? The first thing is that we want to stay calm. We want to stay focused on de-escalation. The focus of our interactions need to be mindful and always geared towards getting the person to calm down, giving them space, allowing them to talk it out in a safe way. We want to manage our own responses. We want to check in with our bodies, right? At the beginning of our time together, we did that small exercise about where we feel tension, where we feel release. So when escalation occurs, what are you doing? What is your face doing? What's your breath doing? Is that going to trigger the individual in any way? Are you engaging in active and reflective listening, or are you asking questions that are triggering? Are you really trying to understand the individual? So again, manage our own responses, manage our bodies and our actions. We want to identify the purpose to our interactions. So we want to focus on the individual's experience. Again, we're validating, not minimizing. We want to help them talk and be able to unpack their emotions so that we can help them learn a strategy that's going to be more useful. We want to avoid physical confrontation. We want to respect the personal space. We don't want to get in people's faces, but we do want to set safety limits. So if you see that somebody is, you know, really escalated and becoming physically aggressive and they're punching walls or they're throwing items, we definitely, safety first always. So know that when an individual is engaging in safety behaviors, you want to call for help if it gets to that point. So maybe a crisis team, 911, if necessary, If there is a weapon involved, maybe 911, the police. But really, we always want to circle back to the client, right? Because the purpose is the person's interaction, the person's experience. And so we want to circle back to, okay, this is how you're feeling. Let's talk about some strategies that might help you get to a solution without feeling these intense experiences. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura as she walks us through debriefing escalation events.
Thank you, Mari. Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, of course, when an event of escalation occurs, there is an opportunity that happens immediately right after, and then within hours or days after. And that really comes to debriefing what occurred. So why do we debrief? Well, certainly, as Mari talked about, we want to have a cultural humility approach. So understanding aspects of what happened, being able to commit to that self-critique is a part of it. But first and foremost, it is about immediately checking in to make sure that you and others are okay. When you're as staff and working with other staff, you want to have a space to check in, to make sure people are okay, to help regulate our own emotions, as staff working within housing insecurity or homelessness. So there are opportunities. We can do that on an individual level. We can do that through a meeting. So an individual meeting, a staff meeting, we can talk through it in supervision. You want to find a platform to be able to do that with each other. We also want to do that for the clients that were involved. Whomever was de-escalated, whomever was escalated in those events, at some point you want to come back and follow up, and if you can help repair the situation, help learn from what occurred, and just really think about that proactive regulation that Mari spoke about, and helping that individual to recognize maybe things that they could have done better, but also give them a chance to articulate things that you or the staff could have done better, and really building that transparent flow of information really helps to set the dynamics so that there's an even playing field and an opportunity for growth for everyone involved. And again, there's many different ways we can do this, through either formal meetings, informal meetings, check-ins, phone calls, through email, really thinking about the many ways that you can allow opportunities for people to share their experiences, talk about what happened, feel if they've done anything that they thought was done well and successful, talk about areas for improvement moving forward. And all of this lends to helping to decrease burnout and compassion fatigue over time for your staff. It also, like I said, helps to build or repair relationships and engagement between clients and the staff or the program. If you go into the next slide, with resilience, we're hoping to foster a resilient and compassionate culture within the staff, within the organization. Several factors that go into feeling resilient is certainly feeling valued, being able to have voice and choice, and feeling like your voice is heard and that it matters. Feeling supported in your work, and having the resources to do your job. So again, the idea of debriefing and sort of the staff impact when escalated events occur, and especially if they occur more frequently, it's an opportunity to make some shifts. And it's an opportunity to increase that resiliency to hopefully decrease burnout and compassion fatigue. In the moment when we're in an escalated event, especially if you're the one sort of directly involved, Whether we like it or not, our bodies have a reaction to that. Cortisol levels increase, that adrenaline pumps, and that takes a toll on our body. If we don't help our bodies to come down from that stress response, it can have some lasting effects. And over time, if you're in a location where these kinds of events happen more frequently, it makes it all the more important to figure out ways to intentionally help those shifts in your body to decrease, right? To bring down the stress, to increase relaxation, to decrease those cortisol and adrenaline shifts that happen. So we can do this certainly with self-care. If you move on to the next slide, we use the term self-care in many different ways. This is really all encompassing of how we take care of ourselves, both personally and professionally. And, this does start with these ABCs, so awareness, balance, and connection. So awareness first and foremost of like what your experience are, your thoughts and feelings, the resources and support. And again, checking in when you're doing debriefing and learning from these experiences that you have will help move forward and build that awareness. Having a balance. So thinking about, after certain events, maybe you need to take some time off. Maybe you need to make sure you're spending some time working on things or talking about things in supervision. Maybe it's about sharing in the successes of how you managed an escalated event. Keeping those professional boundaries and doing some of these different techniques can help you to manage that compassion fatigue that we sometimes feel when we're helping others often, and it gets to be really strenuous or stressful. And that connection, we do want to keep and build a connection between ourselves and others, and sort of thinking about that bigger picture of why are we doing this work? What are we doing it for? How is it helpful? And how can I maintain that sort of trauma-informed, compassionate approach to and with my clients, especially when they are having difficulties. We spent time in another webinar earlier on talking about all sorts of different kinds of ways that we can engage in self-care. So things that focused around nutrition, focused around activity or body movement, the way in which how much we get sleep, different kinds of grounding techniques, and other relaxation techniques, deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, square breathing, nostril breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, all sorts of different kinds of opportunities, and some of which you can do as part of your workday. And so important, again, after an event of escalation, that you do try to do things that can intentionally reduce that level of stress and anxiety that you might be going through immediately after an event. Long-term, we really encourage that you build it into your workday practices as well as in your personal life. So I want to encourage each of you as you move forward after today's webinar to try to think about one way you can intentionally build in a self-care activity within your day. It doesn't have to be long. It could be less than 5 minutes. It could be a part of lunch, but really think about what's one thing you could commit to. If you go to the next slide. And so now I'd love to introduce sort of our next section of this webinar, which is really about the lived experience perspective. And we have our 3 panelists here to talk more. We have Biff Hitchens, Carrie Parrott, and then Dr. Daniel Rosa, all to talk with you. So I'll first turn it over to Biff.
Hello, everyone. Live from hot New Orleans. My name is Biff Hitchens. I'm a peer specialist at MHSD, which is the mental health district for New Orleans in the greater New Orleans area. A little history about me. I was diagnosed back in 2009 with bipolar with psychotic features. I've had over 36 hospitalizations over the last 12 years. It's been quite a rocky road. I've experienced some 3 jail sentences, a lot of different altercations with either family members, friends, police, things like that. My journey really started back when I was 18. I started with drug addiction back in college. I kind of got into experimentation, different things like that with drugs and alcohol. Kind of got into a group of friends that I looked up to, but they were not necessarily the best influence on me. And so started experimentation, which led to about 6 years of like functional addiction, where I was able to kind of get things done, but I was a functional addict. And so when I was 24, back in 2009, I had this kind of higher power moment. I was at a pretty decadent New Year's Eve party and kind of had this big moment of like, I feel like I didn't belong here, and things, like that kind of had this higher power. I was very far from faith and all those things then. And so after that, I started having what was bipolar symptoms and extreme euphoria, all these different things that I wasn't really aware of what was happening to me. And that's one real big thing I'm an advocate for, is education in the community. So I'm glad that there's webinars and just more people being aware of kind of what mental health is. Just what are some signs and symptoms, because I was confused. I thought I was enlightened. I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I had, I was in touch with heaven, all these different things. And so, but I started having rapid mood swings and, all these things that I just really was kind of confused, and reckless behavior. And so that landed me in a hospital where I was heavily medicated on multiple antipsychotics. I was drooling and just all these things. And so after a while, I'll kind of sum it up, many just really tough years, right after jail in 2011, I had a real rock bottom experience where I was very symptomatic, and I was maced pretty, I was bipolar and aggressive. And so in jail, that's what happens. And the guards didn't treat me too well. But at that point, I really got my addiction under control and started working with my medications. And a few years later, my counselor was like, hey, so you love people and you love talking and connecting with people. So why don't you get into peer support? So I got into peer support, and I've had a very supportive experience working at MHSD. I have wonderful supervisors, the executive director, and everyone's just really been behind just really person-centered care, which I think is extremely important. They talked about trauma-informed care, and person-centered care is where we're the experts of our own experience, recovery, and like we know what works for us and things like that. So a little bit about de-escalation. As far as my lived experience, I was usually the one escalated, unfortunately, in a lot of interactions. So I kind of learned, I had some good experiences and bad experiences. Sometimes people would come very aggressively, and then with psychosis and things, sometimes we're not fully registering people's tones like they're saying it. Like I know one time, like when my dad was speaking to me, I thought he was screaming at me, and then he's like, son, I'm just talking normally. So one of the big things as a tip is really tone and just kind of come as like calmly, and just like any kind of weird kind of fidgeting or anything like that can be misconstrued as some kind of, I don't know, it depends on what the person's experiencing. I really recommend, if you don't know your crisis team in your area, to be linked up with them in lieu of calling 911. Not that police are not trained nowadays and things, but our crisis team specifically does wonderful work where they come out with either a peer specialist like myself or a social worker, and they work, like the police do sometimes need to be called, but oftentimes people can be avoid the hospital or avoid even further, further kind of confusion or just like further escalation by having someone come out that kind of has that approach. Because not everybody's going to want to see 4 police officers show up at their door when they're thinking the feds are out to get them. Well, it's like, oh, the feds are here. So it's like, and then it's an altercation. So, it just kind of, it's really, I encourage the utilization of your local crisis team, and most bigger, and I know some rural areas might not have that, but most larger cities do. And some more methods, I would say, kind of present people like when they're at crisis, and especially with psychosis or something, they're trying to figure reality, kind of ask questions and give them their options. Don't say, hey, I think you need to do this or whatever. Just kind of present, hey, these are some things we can do. We can call, you have a family member we can call. Do we have the police? Not the police. Do we have do you feel like you need to go to the hospital? Like, do you want to talk to a counselor? Kind of like let the choice be up to them. And then also don't give false promises. Don't say like, hey, if they go to the hospital, they're not going to, or if we send you to the hospital, they won't make you take your medication. Well, I've been in there many times, and really you don't get to leave sometimes until you've agreed to take whatever the doctor's giving you. So though they don't force it, they may hold you there until you take it. So certain things like that, like just, you don't really know, like say, hey, it's going to get better tomorrow. Like you don't know that, like you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Also choice of words and just kind of tone, especially like kind of like I was saying before, things can get misconstrued really easily when someone's in psychosis. And the big thing is just ask questions. I find find out like what is your reality right now, or what's that person's reality right now, like say, and really try, because some of it can be silly. I personally use humor now to kind of laugh at some of the traumas I dealt with, because I was believing some really strange things, thinking I was some African king, all these goofy things like that. So it's silly now, but if someone tells you something way out of left field, you can't laugh, and you really have to hold your composure and just be like, okay, all right, we're gonna figure this out. Like, because if they, at that time, I would have been offended. It's like, how do you not believe I'm, this, that, or the other? So, you just kind of have to really watch your reactions to some pretty, I've heard some different things over the years working, that people think some different strange things. So you just kind of stay calm and kind of keep like a very level body language, and it's facial expressions as well. And so I also work with the First Episode Psychosis program, which is the young adults or teenagers that have their first episode of schizophrenic, or either a break or some kind of psychosis. And I've really learned that kind of asking them, like if someone's really closed off to you, they don't want to talk and things, kind of ask them about their hopes, their dreams, what their interests are, things like that. And that can honestly sometimes will help ground them from their kind of like whatever they're experiencing, like the insane kind of just chaos that's going on. It's like, hey, let's talk about the game. Did you see the game this week? Or hey, like that. And sometimes you get them talking about a subject they like, and then they kind of open up and kind of build that rapport, especially if you're working with different individuals in the indigent population. Like you see them often, really just kind of remember their stories and find their interests. So like if it is someone that you've seen when they're well and then they're having a crisis, try and kind of key in on those things when you're talking with them. Because I know certain persons served that we work with, I was able to kind of connect with them while they were in psychosis because of that rapport we had. So I think rapport building is very big as well. And they already said it earlier, but some last pieces of advice. One definitely is use your local crisis team. I can't say that enough. Two is personal safety. If someone is wielding a weapon or is like getting very aggressive, just take a step back, keep that healthy boundary. You do not need to, be on the news. It's like it's can be violent, and sometimes you have to know when to call 911 and when not to. But the big thing is to not just jump to that, especially if it's someone you're working with and they think as soon as you see them or they so open up to you that they're having problems, you're going to call the police or the hospital. That's gonna hurt that kind of rapport you've built with them, so they're not going to necessarily open up to you if they see you again, like, oh, this guy's just going to call the police if I tell them something, or they're going to call the hospital. So yeah, and I'm so happy. Thank you guys. That's all I got. I appreciate y'all having me on, and anything you have questions for me later, we have a Q&A later, go on and put it in the chat, and just thank y'all for letting me present.
Thank you so much, Biff. We'll now turn it over to Carrie Parrott.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to beautiful Athens, Georgia. It's blistering hot here, but we'll try to make it through this. I would, first of all, like to take the opportunity to just thank you guys for letting me be a part of this. I'm very excited about anything that's going to help people get better. If you read my bio, you've probably seen some of my credentials and things, and that's okay. And I'm grateful and humbled by those, and sort of proud of some of my accomplishments. But the thing that I'm most proud about today is that I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I haven't had a drink or any other mood-altering chemicals for 15 and a half years now. Don't you keep your seats. You don't have to get up, keep your seats. But seriously, what that means for me being in long-term recovery, it means that I get an opportunity to share my experiences with other people, because I want every individual, every family in every community to know that recovery is real. We do recover. And I'm sitting here in front of you today as living proof that the work that you're doing and that the impact it's going to have on an individual's life is immeasurable. Sometimes we can't see that. We don't see the outcome for years, if we ever see them at all. But I'm here to encourage you to say that, hey, recovery is real. When we're assisting people in moving in that direction, it's very meaningful work. And when I get an opportunity to share my story to impact that process, I'm so excited to do that. My experience with trauma, and I'm glad that it was sort of in the slides at the very beginning, because I think that for many of us, it begins in childhood, and I'm no exception. So I'm the adult child of an alcoholic. If any of you can relate to that, you know exactly what that means. That's where, for me, the fear, the anxiety, the insecurity, the guilt and the shame first entered my life. Okay, so my dad was an alcoholic. Mom had her own mental health challenges, and it just created a very stressful environment, living environment. And so I like to think about it as the precarious nature of trauma. I always felt like I was living on the edge, and I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I remember, just not being comfortable in my own skin because of the level of anxiety and the level of trauma, and learning how what I call the great cover-up. Learning how to begin to pretend that I was okay when I really wasn't okay. And one of the biggest parts of that is learning in my household as a child, learning to keep secrets. Okay, we don't share what goes on in here. We don't tell anybody what's going on. You don't get to express that. And working as a clinical social worker in the community today, sometimes I'm getting out of my car and I'm going to do a home visit. I have to chuckle to myself to sort of think about, when in my neighborhood, when I was a kid, when the social worker came, everybody scattered. People, shut their blinds and locked their doors, and nobody wanted to talk to a social worker because we weren't allowed to tell our stories. I wasn't allowed to tell my story. And as you'll see a little later on, how much of an impact that sort of had on me later on in life. But moving on through life, and ended up enlisting in the military, and suffered a personal assault while I was active duty. And being discharged from the military with, a hypervigilance and anxiety and depression and not knowing where this was coming from. I didn't know anything about PTSD. I heard about it, just casually or anything like that. Didn't know what the signs and symptoms or anything like that was about PTSD. But I'm suffering with that undiagnosed, and I don't know. But I knew how to self-medicate, and that's what I started to do. So alcohol, other drugs, I started to self-medicate to deal and cope with the anxiety, to cope with the stress, to cope with the paranoia, to cope with the hypervigilance. That feeling, like I said, that precarious nature of something's about to happen, the other shoe's going to fall in any minute, and feeling like I'm in danger. So that started a life of addiction. That started a life of incarcerations. That started a life of mental institutions, in and out, in and out. And it started a life of homelessness. Okay, so, and sometimes I try to go back and look at my old booking dockets and stuff, and sort of compare, what's on the record to what I remember. But I'm sitting here before you today, and I haven't done it recently, but I honestly can't tell you how many times I've been arrested. I can't tell you how many times, honestly, that I've been hospitalized. I can't tell you how many times, honestly, that, that I experienced homelessness, where it was just, now we sort of document that, but that was a lifestyle. So it wasn't something that really was something that I would consider to be out of the norm at the time. And when we talk about veterans, there was a slide up earlier, and when we started this training, and we were talking about veterans. Why was that 10% of a veteran that made up the 10% of homelessness? I was that veteran that made up the 45% of mental illness. I was that veteran with 13 that was made up the 13% of the population of veterans with PTSD, and I was that veteran that made up the 70% of veterans with substance abuse problems. So, my drug of choice was crack cocaine. Started me on a complete downward spiral, and I stayed in that for a very long time, over 20 years, in and out of prison, in and out of. If I wasn't in prison, I was in a mental institution. And we say treatment and stuff like that, but it really, when I think about it, it's being institutionalized for mental health disorder, the substance use disorder. And so, that was the problem. So, we sort of tell, what happened, what it was like, and what it was like, and what it's like now, and to share with you what it's like now, and to send out some hope to say that, thank God we do recover. I was able, and I often wonder, had peer support services been around when I first started to try to get clean, how that would have worked out. Because I truly feel like in my heart, I think that would have been a better approach for me. And I'm saying that as a clinician who, gets up every day and works through the process of, interventions and trying to, employ these therapeutic interventions to help people get better. But the peer support part of it, this for me personally was a very big deal. And I say that because it honored my choice and my voice. And for the first time, I was able to honestly be able to tell my story. So going all the way back to childhood, where I was taught, don't say anything, don't share, don't make yourself vulnerable. For the first time, I was in a safe place where I felt like I could share my story, and I needed to say that to get free. And I needed a safe place to do that. I also needed to hear the stories of other people. I needed to hear other people share that they had had similar experiences such as mine, and what they did to get better. That was so powerful that I never had that, and I didn't get that from like inpatient treatments. I mean, that wasn't it wasn't structured that way. Okay, and also one of the things that peer support did, it underscored the importance of having a safe and sober place to live. You just can't underscore that enough. Coming off the street, coming out of homelessness, self-preservation is the key. I'm not really thinking about anything more so than survival, and I'm in that mode. Okay, so peer supports allowed me to have the opportunity, for somebody to say, hey, you got a safe and sober place to stay tonight? Because if not, let's work on that. Let's fix that. So as a certified peer specialist for addictive diseases, that's something I always try to be mindful of when I'm working with people that are trying to process through this trauma and get to the other side. And start living in recovery. That there a lot of times that's where I need to start. Okay, on the clinical side, I have found, because I'll find that I'm taking off one hat, putting on the other sometimes, and that's okay. We need to do that sometimes. And I thank God for my lived experience when I'm working with my peers, and when I'm working with my clients. Okay, so I thank God for the lived experience, but it allows me to have some insight into what that person may be experiencing at the time, and being able to speak a different kind of language that I think resonates with the individual, and it sort of allows us to have a breakthrough that I don't think would otherwise be possible. So I thank God for that. But on the clinical side, the empathetic, being able to listen empathetically, okay, paying attention to the thoughts and feelings of the person that's talking and speaking to me, and that's in front of me. What it does for me is it gives me the tools to see the problem. Okay, I mean, I'd hate to go in, to be treated, to see the doctor, wanting to be treated for diabetes, and they send me to a radiologist. I mean, what are we doing here? No, I probably need to see a diabetes doctor, a specialist in that. Okay, because I need to be, personally, I need to see the problem. And it's going to help me understand the effects that the problem is having on the individual. Okay, that listening. It was in the earlier slides, and I was excited to see that, because my understanding of that problem is going to help me find a solution. To partner with, my peer, to partner with my client, and to help us find a solution for this problem. And I'm hearing what this person has to share with me. And I have to be, I found that I have to be present. And I think somebody mentioned it early on also. So this training's been spot on. I have to be present. I can't be thinking about what I'm going to cook for dinner tonight. I mean, that can be a struggle sometimes, or wondering if I'm going to get a call from my kid's school or something like that. Or my cell phone's not on silent, it's pinging over there or something. But I've learned for myself personally, from a clinical perspective, I need to be present with the individual. That we need to develop, some trust, some understanding, and I need to be mindful of. And this is important for me because it certainly had an impact in my life. But I need to be mindful of this may just be the first opportunity that this individual's ever had to tell their story. The very first opportunity, and that should be validated, in my opinion. I just think that really should be validated. And the way that I'm going to do that is by being present with the individual. And I think that all of these factors go toward the work that we do with trauma and de-escalation. Understanding the demographics. When we talk about childhood, how it starts in childhood. And we talked earlier about the nature of trauma and how it sort of develops and everything. But we also put it in context with respect to homelessness, and how that is so impactful when it comes to working toward de-escalation and understanding that individual. And so for me, all of that speaks toward ways that I can help, most importantly, by hearing the stories of other people, and by having the opportunity to share my story, so that if it helps one person, that's a really good thing in my book. So again, guys, I hope that there was something that I shared with you guys that you can use today based on my lived experience. It's been a great honor to be here with you today. I look forward to the rest of the training. And I just like to say, by way of a hope shot, hey, continue to do the great work that you guys are doing. You're tuning in here today, hopefully to get some more resources on how you can do your job better. And we're always trying to train. We're always trying to improve, and I'm no exception. So I'm going to take a step back and pass it off. And Daniel will, I'm sure, be very, very helpful in helping us better understand trauma and de-escalation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We really appreciate that. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Daniel Rosa. Thank you.
Okay, if I could get my first slide, thank you. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for the invite. And I would like to share a little bit of this first slide. I'm actually not trying to promote ATLS. I've been an instructor professor of ATLS, traumatic life support. But to my shame and to my embarrassment, it wasn't until like 10 years ago that I actually came to terms with the fact that there was a broader definition of trauma. Quite frankly, in my life, after I stabilized a gunshot wound, a stab wound, somebody who fell, got hit by a car, or whatever kind of physical trauma, my job was over. And I really didn't consider any other events that needed to be addressed as far as trauma was concerned. And I certainly didn't even know or come to terms with the fact that I was actually a victim of the broader sense of trauma. The next slide, please. I was actually born and raised in the South Bronx, and for a couple of years, I lived in this abandoned, in an abandoned building to the right side of the slide there, third floor. Our playground was actually where these kids are hanging out there. It was basically an abandoned storefront. And we used to basically play there. I mean, that was the extent of it. Next slide, please. As far as the trauma of being of living, you know, in an abandoned building, and well, basically, I would say that as an 8 or 9 year old, when these events occurred to me, that I was actually a squatter, basically housing insecurity type of thing. I basically had all of these, but I remember the worst part of it, I think, was the shame of going to school with other kids that they didn't live in lavish homes or anything like that, but they at least had a roof over their head, okay, and they had running water and they had electricity. So that shame was the worst part of it. The next slide, please. I wanted to lash out in ways that I can't even begin to express to you, but to be perfectly honest, I wanted to lash out at the world, but my world was really kind of confined and very small. And bordered on all sides by youth gangs. Actually, the youth gang in my the local youth gang in my neighborhood were the Reapers. Some of them are pictured here, who actually headquartered in that same building that I actually depicted earlier. And to be perfectly honest, they did give you a little sense of, they did provide a sense of security and community and organization that was actually lacking in the rest of the neighborhood. As an 8 or 9 year old, unfortunately, these individuals, which were largely very violent and mostly lawless, were kind of like the only role models that we had growing up. I'm not promoting youth gangs at all, but you have to understand and I'm sure that you do, the circumstances that lead the youth to consider these unfortunate circumstances and aspirations. Next slide, please. Of course, there was a downside to being a gang member. Here you see a family member of mine. He was 17 years old when he passed away during a gang-related conflict, and many of the other that gang was about 500 strong, and many of them succumbed to very violent ends. Next slide, please. To be perfectly honest, about 10 years later, I found myself in a different setting, and I received I went to a top-notch school, and I received a wonderful education. That's not part of it. But quite frankly, the trauma continued. I came across a different trauma, a new depiction, if you will, tokenism. When I was admitted to Harvard Medical School, and I could sense that I was being treated differently. That many of the other students didn't consider me to be a part of the community per se, that I was gifted, that I was being a member of a minority group and a person of color, that I didn't really belong there. I didn't actually engage in the same type of, how would I say, success that they did. Although in the end, of course, I had to pass the same requirements and pass the same tests as my exalted population. So who actually had, basically gotten there by their usual means, but that I didn't. But to be perfectly honest, in the end, I had to, next slide, please. I finally came to terms with the fact that I had to do a lot of my own self de-escalation, to be perfectly honest. And you can imagine that I have had, at this point, a lifetime experience of self de-escalation. But in retrospect, it kind of prepared me for the kind of life that I eventually transitioned into as being a provider, an emergency room physician. And over the past 10 years, I work here at Acacia Network, which is one of the largest nonprofits, certainly the largest Hispanic-led nonprofit, basically entirely integrated as far as home health and social services and homelessness services are concerned. Next slide. So basically, as far as de-escalation, this is a daily thing for me. And 90% of the time, you can say that the standard de-escalation and a lot of what Mari and Laura have mentioned, 90% or greater than 90% of the time, they will, most of the patients and the clients will respond to the standard de-escalation measures that were so nicely put about by Mary and Laura. But every once in a while they don't. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Next slide, please. The first thing, actually for me, is kind of like simple, to be perfectly honest. Is it a life-threatening de-escalation situation that I'm dealing with? And this is in the emergency department, even here in my office. Next slide, please. And I'll give you a few examples. This is, let's say, for instance, recently I saw a 49-year-old homeless male who was well known. He actually had, not just detox, but he was treated multiple times over the past year for withdrawal. And he came in and he responded to the standard withdrawal medications that we give. His vital signs, as you can see there, were rather normal. His pulse was 50. He had an alcohol level of 285. So we gave him a little Ativan, and basically we were going to admit him just like we did about a month before. But less than an hour later, he was found unresponsive and he was barely breathing. I intubated him and sent him right to the CAT scanner. Next slide, please. And every once in a while, unfortunately, you do see something like this. That white part of it is all blood. He basically, this time, had a very, very serious acute emergency, which was bleeding into his brain. This is called an epidural. Has to be treated almost immediately. He has to go immediately to the operating room to basically take out this blood. And he actually did. He did very, very well, as a matter of fact. We found him in time. But again, one of the pitfalls is when de-escalation doesn't work and the standard de-escalation, like Mari and Laura mentioned before, you really have to take the stance to kind of refer and do it as quickly as possible, because it could be a life-threatening de-escalation that you're dealing with. The next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, yeah, perfect. Another one was a 19-year-old. She was a transiently homeless female sex worker. She lived in a residential setting, and she basically came in very, very agitated. We were, at no part, we were able to basically redirect her. So she wasn't able to give any history. She was reeking of urine. So I quickly basically sedated her and sent her for a CAT scan, just like I did before. Next slide. The vital signs were fine. And she had a history of ADHD. She was taking D-amphetamine. And this CT scan is absolutely normal, as a matter of fact. If you remember the other one, you saw that white stuff that was bleeding. There was no signs of any kind of trauma, physical trauma to the head here. Next slide, please. And the CT of the head, 15 minutes later, after she got back from the CAT scanner, she started having this horrible, very violent seizure. And while I intubated her, and while I was basically making arrangements to send her to the ICU, she we got this sodium of 110. Next slide, please, which is very, very, very low. And this was one of the common instances in which we see metabolic abnormalities as far as the laboratories is concerned with ecstasy, which the kids love doing. She was 19 years old. The kids very rarely, as a matter of fact, are actually alcohol dependent, as it turns out. They may go on binges and what have you, but they use these more sort of like club drugs. And the mollies, which is MDMA or ecstasy, is a very, very popular one among the youth. Next slide, please. We also had this 41-year-old who came in from, he was brought in by police. He basically he was kicking at them and basically very, very paranoid, but he agreed to to allow triage to a Spanish-speaking nurse. And the first thing that we noticed was that maybe this agitation might have something to do with the fact that he had a temperature of almost 104. And not only that, but the pulse oximetry, which is supposed to be bordering on 100, was 88, means that he wasn't getting enough oxygen. And he was lashing out. He tried to actually leave the emergency department. He ran out, but we were able to bring him back, and his oximetry, his oxygen went down to 85%. Intubated him and sent him for a chest x-ray. Next slide. And this is wherever you see all this whiteness, except for the middle part, which is the heart, that's all pneumonia. Both sides of his lungs had this horrible, horrible pneumonia. Next slide, please. And we know this recently as, of course, COVID-19, which everybody is familiar with at this time. So that, next slide, please. The reason that he was agitated and because standard de-escalation did not work on him was because of the fact that he couldn't breathe. And not only that, but he was also under the influence of K2. Vaccine hesitancy in the homeless is something that is everyone's responsibility. We have to basically continue to encourage vaccinations, especially among the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable, of course, I can't think of a more vulnerable population than the homeless population. Next slide, please. Homelessness is in and by itself a life-threatening condition. And that is the gist of my talk as far as that's concerned. Next slide, please. In summary, homelessness is a life-threatening situation, and we all know why. It's a very lonely, frightening, isolating experience, fraught with unimaginable insecurities and trauma. Next slide, please. I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this wonderful panel of speakers, and to all of you out there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I just wanted to say we are wrapping up. I know we're coming to the end of our 90 minutes. I have no words to fully express how grateful and happy we are that you shared your expertise, that you shared your personal stories. Me and my team, we've been reading all of the Q&A and the comments, and we will make sure we get that feedback to you. It was so impactful to the entire audience. So thank you, thank you. We also collected the questions that were coming in. As I said, we will follow up and get you some answers. If you have additional questions, feel free to add them into the survey link that Kevin just added to the chat, or email us at info@hhrctraining.org, and we'll follow up with you for sure. So again, we have an evaluation available. Once you complete that, you'll get a certificate of participation. If that's something that you might need for your work, or if you are submitting those on your own for CEUs, we just really appreciate the participation. We had over 3,000 people join us today, and so that's just really incredible. So thank you to all of our speakers, Mari, Laura, Biff, Carrie, and Daniel. It really means a lot to our community that we can have these conversations and share how our personal experiences can be used to really help people experiencing homelessness who are in a crisis. So thank you so much, and be in touch with the Homeless and Housing Resource Team if there is anything that we can do for you. The recording will be available in about a week, and the slides are available on our website now. So reach out, be in touch, and we look forward to bringing you more trainings. Thank you so much.